Dr. Rick Scarborough and a fellow pastor. I'm also president of Vision America Action, a ministry that's dedicated to assisting pastors as they seek to lead our nation back to our historical biblical roots. I want to welcome you to the call where I'm going to just speak for a few minutes as we're placing literally thousands of calls across Arkansas and Florida, which is the focus of our telephone call today. Let me just apologize if you received one of the invites with a header speaking of Dr. Young. We do these calls across America, and yesterday we were talking to Texas, so we crossed a wire there. But you're going to hear from Mike Huckabee and Tony Perkins, our special guest for today's call, and I think you're going to be blessed as a result of being on this call. By the way, if at any point you want to speak to a live operator, we've got people standing by. All you've got to do is press the number 7. Someone will promptly take your call. Let me just say that beginning next Tuesday, we're going to conduct 13 events across Arkansas and Florida, and we would love to have you, Pastor, be a part of one of those events. So if at any point you want to speak to someone about an event nearest you, punch the number 7. In just a few moments, Governor Mike Huckabee and Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council, will both be on the line. In fact, they're standing by as I speak. We're going to wait just a few more moments while calls are going out across Arkansas and Florida, inviting your colleagues to join this call. Again, my name is Rick Scarborough, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on this call. By the way, if you can stay with us for the entire 30 minutes, we'll be through at 11:30 Eastern Time. We're going to offer about $100 worth of materials to you free of charge, books and materials from Family Research Council that we think will help you in your leadership of your church to be salt and light. So please stay on the line for the entire call if at all possible. At any point, if you need information about events that we're hosting over the next 2 weeks in Florida as well as Arkansas, if you'll click the number 7 on your phone, an operator is standing by to answer your questions, to assist you. And if you desire to register for one of those events, they'll sign you up on the spot. But thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I'm lobbying just a little bit because we're right now opening the lines to literally several thousand pastors in both states, and we want to give them plenty of time to connect into this call. My name is Rick Scarborough. I will be your host for the call today. Our special guest, Governor Mike Huckabee and Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, will both be speaking to you. They're standing by even as I speak. But I want to welcome those of you who just joined us to this call. I'm praying that all of us together jointly can unite in our common desire to see revival and renewal to our country. You know, I have often said, pastors, and by the way, for those of you who just joined us, I am a fellow pastor, that what America has is at its root a spiritual problem. And the only professionals in our country that can address that adequately are the pastors, those who've been called of God to spiritually lead this country. We have a preacher problem right now, a vacuum of pastors who are speaking out. But I am grateful that you took the initiative today to join us because it tells me you have that heart. And we're going to help today to try to facilitate giving you a broader, louder voice to this country because we believe you are not a solution, you are the solution as the watchman on the wall. And so in just a few moments, a fellow pastor whom God called into public service, Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas, will be addressing you. Tony Perkins, who also has a calling on his life and is a very capable preacher, is the head of Family Research Council. He's also a former elected official. He'll be addressing you. And as I said earlier, if you can stay with us all the way till 11:30, we're going to give you access to a host of materials. Perhaps the most valuable is a complete manual, a how-to kit from Family Research Council called the Cultural Impact Manual. That gentleman cost about $60 to produce, and we're going to make that available to you free as our gift for you staying with us the entire call, as well as several books that I've written that we want to send to you as our gift. In just a moment, we'll bring up our first guest, but we are we want to express our gratitude for your being with us today and for you taking part in this very, very important call. For those of you just joining, my name is Rick Scarborough. This is an historic Tele-Town Hall meeting in which thousands of pastors from Arkansas and Florida have been personally invited. Thousands of calls are going out even as I speak to urge pastors to be on this call. For those of you who've already joined us, if you'll be patient for a couple of more minutes, I'll bring up our first guest shortly, Governor Mike Huckabee, followed by Tony Perkins, the President of Family Research Council. Thank you so much for being on our call today. Thank you as well for taking the stand you take there in Arkansas and Florida. We're doing these calls literally across America. I spoke to hundreds of pastors in Texas yesterday about the battle for marriage there. A federal judge has struck down an amendment to the Constitution passed by an overwhelming majority of Texans. Guys, that's what we're seeing happen all over the country. What the left and the liberal atheistic mindset of the left can't accomplish at the ballot box, they're doing through activist judges. And so it's absolutely incumbent upon us pastors that we stand up, speak up, and refuse to give up another inch of ground of our beloved country to those who seek to destroy us. I think at this point in time, Governor Mike Huckabee, I'd like to go ahead and introduce you. Are you on the line at this point?
Yes, I am.
Well, I am very grateful for you taking time out of a hectic and busy schedule to join us. Governor Mike Huckabee needs really no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. But just before I do that, pastors, let me remind you that at any point in today's call, if you want more information about one of 13 events that we're hosting across Arkansas and Florida, if you'll just press the number 7, someone will answer the phone. A live operator will give you the necessary information. We'll even sign you up for an event nearest to your church if you're so interested. And also be aware, as Governor Huckabee is speaking, we have a poll question that we'll give you the results of at the end of our call. Let me ask you this, and you can respond immediately. How many of your current church members do you think are registered to vote? If you think 25% are registered, press 1. If you think 50% are registered, press 2. If you think that 75 or more are registered, press 3. I'll repeat that. This is a poll we'll give you the results on at the end of this call. If you think 25% are registered, press 1. If you think 50% are registered, press 2. If you think 75% or more are registered, press 3. And we'll give you the results of that poll at the end of this call. Governor Huckabee was the 44th governor of Arkansas from 1996 to 2007. He was a candidate in 2008 for the United States Republican presidential primaries, winning the 2008 Iowa Republican caucus and finishing second in delegate count, third in both popular vote and number of states won behind John McCain and Mitt Romney. He currently hosts Fox News Channel's #1 weekend show, Huckabee. He's the author of several best-selling books, an ordained Southern Baptist minister, accomplished musician, public speaker, and I considered by me a very dear friend. Governor Huckabee, we are grateful for you being our guest today.
Well, thank you, Rick. I appreciate it very much. And after that nice introduction, I couldn't wait to hear me. I'm really grateful.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, go
Last
ahead.
night, our president took 15 minutes to address the nation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the president had to say to our country last night, as well as your thoughts on the 13th anniversary of 9/11. So share with our listeners how you felt about the speech, as well as your thoughts about 9/11.
Well, it is a very, I think, sobering day for every American because we all remember where we were on this day. It's like those seminal events in our lives, the Kennedy assassination, the shooting of Ronald Reagan, the landing of Neil Armstrong on the moon. There are many moments in American history, if we've lived through them, that are those indelibly etched moments in our hearts and minds, and this is one of them as we think back and see the images replayed on television. less than a week ago, I was at the 9/11 memorial. We did a taping from my television show and went through the memorial with the director. And it was just a stark reminder of what we're up against. But I want to make very clear what I think we need to hear from the president. We heard some things that were a little bit encouraging in the sense that he seems to understand that ISIS is a real threat, not just a JV team. That was good. I'm glad he's actually using some of the exact rhetoric that maybe he's listening to my commentaries, because I've said we've got a cancer, we have to eradicate it. Those were exact words that he used, and I'm glad he did, and I hope he means it. But one thing I think is lacking is an understanding that this is not a battle just between the forces of some terrorist organization. This is a spiritual battle. This is basically a battle between the descendants of Abraham and the descendants of Ishmael, Isaac and Ishmael. This is the battle, and it's a spiritual one. And I'm not in any way, and I want to be very clear, I'm not suggesting that every person who is a Muslim is a terrorist, because that would be unfair and untrue. But if we do not understand that this battle is ultimately a battle against the Judeo-Christian tradition of believing in one God, then we are completely missing the point. This is all about a religious jihad, and the satisfaction of those who have launched this jihad will never be met until every one of us is dead. They don't want a piece of land. They're not after a significant seat at the United Nations. They want the complete annihilation of both Israel and every other country in the world that does not bow to their God. And if we don't fully grasp that, then I think we are going to continue to find ourselves increasingly under threat and less secure. Let me speak to a couple of things very quickly before we go to Tony Perkins. First of all, I want to say I'm grateful that Dr. Scarborough has made available a lot of really wonderful material, and as he's described, you have to stay on the call to the end, so I guess it's biblical. They that endure to the end shall be saved, and will get the material. I know pastors don't need something to do. They don't need anything to add to their calendar, and that's why I so appreciate your time this morning, because I've never met a pastor in my life that was sitting around looking for something to do, saying, gee, I hope somebody will call me so I can spend half an hour on the telephone. So I'm very mindful of your time and respectful of it. I would never ask pastors to become involved in politics because I thought politics was the solution to our nation's problems or to our world's problems. I would unapologetically ask pastors to get involved in helping their people in the pew to understand the spiritual nature of the problems we face, because I'm convinced that the problems are ultimately spiritual, the consequences are political. Sometimes people present it as if we can just get the right people elected to office, the spiritual revival will come. I think it's exactly the opposite. If we can pray, humble ourselves, seek God's face, turn from wicked ways, I believe then God will hear and he will heal our land. So it's the spiritual that has to happen first, and the consequences will be political. But let's look at what the consequences have been, because we haven't been spiritual, because our pulpits have been, unfortunately, often intimidated by fear of the IRS or fear of maybe members that it might get upset. 57 million babies have been slaughtered in their mother's womb since 1973.
God help us.
You think about 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust and 10 million overall in the Holocaust, and we think, what a horror. Yet 6 times that number of the total Holocaust victims have been killed in our own country. And how do we face God with that? Dr. Scarborough was talking about the recent court decisions. I look at what happened. I remember in Arkansas when we passed the affirmation of marriage by a 70% margin, and then one singular circuit court judge on a late Friday afternoon just decided up and on his own that all those voters in Arkansas weren't as important as he was. And he decided that he could overturn that, and unfortunately, a lot of people in the state, including some county clerks, opened their offices the next day to create same-sex marriage that had no authority to do it because there was no enabling legislation for that. there should have been an outcry from the people of the state, a massive outcry, and said, you can't do it. I remind people, the judicial branch is not a supreme branch. It is, even the Supreme Court is only the Supreme Court, not the supreme being. And I fear that we have failed in civics to understand that there are three branches of government, and one of them can't overrule the other two, and all three of them together can't overrule the people. Yet we have people who say, well, the courts have ruled on abortion, we just have to live with it, or the courts have ruled on same-sex marriage, we have to live with it. And I would suggest, no, we don't. We shouldn't just accept things that are ungodly and that will cause us to have to stand before God with bloody hands. I think that's where we failed. I would never urge you to get in the pulpit and endorse a candidate. Even when I ran for office, I never said to a pastor, gosh, I wish you'd get up in the pulpit and endorse me, because people fail. People can always disappoint. Jesus will never disappoint. His word will never disappoint. I would urge pastors to get in the pulpit and call people to biblical truth as it relates to the issue of life and marriage, and even the issue of stewardship, and never be apologetic. And then say, vote the Bible in your own heart. You know, sometimes I hear people say, vote your pocketbook. Well, if you vote the Scriptures, you'll ultimately benefit your pocketbook, because everything about the economy that's wrong would be fixed if people had a biblical understanding of the economy and a biblical understanding of personal stewardship and responsibility. So I just want to say thanks to Dr. Scarborough and Tony and all the others who are putting the events together. The ultimate purpose is to get Christian believers out in record numbers, because if they do, we see elections turn for at least more godly candidates. And if Christians stay home, then we get more of what we have. I never thought I'd live to see the day that in my home state of Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, recently passed an ordinance that guarantees people transgender restroom rights. I never thought I would see that in Arkansas, and yet we're seeing it. So this is not something that's just happening in San Francisco. This is happening in our hometowns. And when I see the IRS attacking churches and pastors, all the more reason we've got to put this organization out of business. They have become a law unto themselves and recklessly trampling over the First Amendment rights of all Americans, but specifically those who are Christian, pro-Israel, conservative, those who do not hold to the politics of this administration. So, Rick, thank you for giving me the opportunity to
Well, Governor, well spoken. Folks, we're taking a poll as the speakers are addressing. And remember that if you think 25% of your people are registered, press 1. If you think 50% are registered, press 2. If you think 75% are registered, press 3. We've got a good poll going as we listen to our speakers. Governor Mike Huckabee, thank God for the clarity of your moral convictions and for the willingness as a public spokesperson to speak out on these issues so clearly. You've never lost your pastor's heart. It's quite obvious. Thank you. Now, if you can stay on the line, we may come back to you here shortly. I do want to bring up our second guest. It is my joy to introduce Tony Perkins. He's the president of the Family Research Council. He's a former member of the Louisiana Legislature, where he served for 8 years and self-imposed a restraint from running for another term because of his own personal convictions. He has authored a number of books. He has a daily radio program, but I believe his greatest contribution has been his outreach to pastors since taking over the leadership of Family Research Council, and we'll have him speak to that here in just a moment. Let me remind all of you, we are hosting 13 events across Florida and Arkansas in the next 2 weeks with outstanding speakers such as Governor Mike Huckabee, General Jerry Boykin, former All-Pro NFL star and ESPN analyst Craig James. If you want to sign up for an event near you, press 7 now. We've got operators standing by that can share with you where these events are, can help you choose and select one that's closest to your church. Just press 7, someone standing by there to take your call. Tony Perkins, would you comment on last night's speech by the President and your thoughts on this anniversary of 9/11?
Well, Dr. Scarborough, thank you for the invitation to be on the call with you and all these pastors in Arkansas and Florida and Governor Huckabee. After you and Governor Huckabee have spoken, I think the only thing left for me to do is do an altar call, actually. But Governor Huckabee has covered it clearly. I would just, one point that really struck out to me, and it's more of expounding upon what Mike said. And I come to this from a background as being a veteran of the Marine Corps and actually spending about a dozen years in law enforcement. You'll never succeed in containing your enemy if you won't identify them. And for the president to say that ISIS, or ISIL as he refers to them, is not Islamic is a blatant example of how political correctness will kill us. This is a group of Islamic militants that are driven by their ideology. Now, that's true, as the governor said, not all Muslims share their form of Islam, but these folks are motivated and they're set to kill anyone who disagrees with their theology. And that's what they've been doing in Syria, and that's what they've been doing in Iraq. Literally hundreds of thousands of Christians have fled. Many have died. We are seeing unfolding of a massive humanitarian crisis in the northern part of Iraq, in the Kurdistan, in that region, Erbil, where these Christians have fled. Erbil has doubled in the size of its population, with almost a little over 1 million refugees flooding that city. And quite frankly, we've not been addressing it. So I am encouraged that the president is finally recognizing the problem. I was on Capitol Hill yesterday speaking to members just before they went into a briefing. I'll be back up there again this afternoon. They are giving the president the support he needs to address this threat, not just to the Middle East, but to the United States as well. And so we need to be praying. This is one of the most dangerous times I think our country has ever been in, and it ties into why we're here today on this call. Yes, we're wrestling with these political issues, those geopolitical issues, but at their core, as Governor Huckabee said, and as you have said, these are spiritual in nature, at their very core. And when I came to the Family Research Council 11 years ago, it was after being in office for almost a decade, I came to a clear understanding in my time in office that while we wrestle in the political realm with these policy issues, the real battle is in the spiritual realm. These are the manifestations of spiritual choices that we have made as a nation, as states, as communities, as families, and as individuals. And if we're to get back on the right track, if we're to make the right choices, and we're to live in a prosperous and free society, we must have those who have the understanding that there is truth, transcendent truth that doesn't change with the polls each week, that will speak clearly. I had a prominent political figure who's a friend of mine I was speaking with recently, and he made a statement that has stuck with me. He said, "Why do pastors want me to speak to issues on television and on the floor of political debates, issues that they won't even speak about from their pulpit?" That was a stunning rebuke of the silence of the church on these issues of our day. And so I want to thank those pastors who are speaking out, but encourage others. These issues like life and marriage and religious freedom, while they've been made political issues, these are not political issues. These are issues of truth. These are biblical issues of morality, which we must have the pastors of our nation speaking to, so that the people in the pews will understand how to discern the times and respond appropriately.
Tony, your commitment to pastors is unparalleled in terms of leading a national organization, and I am grateful for the work that you have done. Pastors, there's still a good number of you on the line. Let me make you aware that, again, we are hosting 13 events for pastors throughout Arkansas and Florida in the next 2 weeks with outstanding speakers like Governor Huckabee, General Jerry Boykin, former All-NFL star and ESPN analyst Craig James. If you want to sign up for an event near you, press 7, and a live operator will assist you. And let me also say, for those of you that stay on this call this long, if you'll also tell them that you'd like the Culture Impact Training Manual that Tony Perkins and his staff have compiled. It is the finest tool that I can recommend to a church to assist you in everything you need to begin voter registration efforts, to educate your people on their role as salt and light in the culture, and to facilitate your church becoming a point of light in an increasingly darkened environment. Simply press 7. A live operator will take the information. Tell them that you want that manual. Tell them that you'd like to receive the free books that I'm offering, including my own bestseller, Enough is Enough. If you'd like more information about our events, you can visit pastors4ar.org if you're in Arkansas. Let me give that again, pastors4ar.org. And likewise in Florida, the address is pastors4fl.org. pastors4fl.org. In conclusion, just a final word or a thought, Governor Huckabee, that you'd like to share with these pastors.
Well, I just want to say again how much I appreciate their tenacity. And I know that pastors who have been on this call are probably the ones that already are lighting their pulpits on fire every Sunday with the message of truth, and that's so important. Don't be weary in well-doing, because I truly think that so many people have been fooled into believing either A, there's nothing we can do to change the trajectory of our nation and world, or two, that what we do in the church really doesn't matter. Well, if I thought either one of those things were the case, I'd go off to some mountain up in the Ozarks and sit with a small supply of food and just wait till the Lord came and got me. I don't believe that's an option. I believe God wants us involved. He wants us to be salt and light, and I pledge to be that. And I urge every pastor on this line to do the same thing, and to believe God is a big God. He can do big things. We have so many instances of history where He has changed the very direction of a nation. He's done it in this one before, and He needs to do it again, but He can't do it if His people aren't on their faces before Him in repentance. And that's my prayer. That's my prayer.
Mike, you'll be interested. I should say Governor Huckabee. Folks, forgive me. Mike and I were in seminary. We were in seminary together, so we go back a long way.
Don't tell them how long ago it was, Rick.
I'm not mentioning that. The poll questions. Let me just give you the response that we received from you pastors today. 9% say 25% of your people are registered. 23% say 50% are registered. 68% say 75% are registered. Tony Perkins, part of your mission, of course, is studying these kinds of statistics. I wish you'd address the actual numbers statistically of evangelicals that are registered to vote, and then I'm going to give a word about how we can help these pastors get more of their people connected.
Well, unfortunately, Dr. Scarborough, many pastors overestimate the participation of their congregants. On average, we find nationally at about 50%. It's gotten a little better in the last few years as there's been emphasis like yours and ours on getting Christians registered. But on average, it's about 50% of those sitting in the pews are registered. But unfortunately, even though that number is not all that overwhelming, when it comes to actually going to vote, that number cuts in almost half. So we literally see, in many cases, slightly over a quarter of the church-going population participating in elections. With that,
and Tony, I know you'll underscore this, but my experience as an activist pastor, we literally were able to elect our people in large numbers to city council and to school board because nobody shows up for those lower echelon elections. And pastors, this will be a shocking statistic to you. In the primaries, when the candidates are selected, the numbers of Christians actually participating is 5 or less %. And we know that for a fact from studying the numbers. We're losing this battle basically because we're not showing up. Pastor, we want to help you correct that. If you'll just simply hit 7, someone standing by will help you discover the closest of 13 events happening across Florida and Arkansas beginning next week. We'll also take the information so we can send you the Culture Impact Training Manual, complete with everything you need to begin registering your people to vote and getting them informed on the issues of our day. Family Research Council is the premier Christian organization in Washington that is training pastors and their leadership in how to be points of light, which we desperately, desperately need. Just hit 7. A live operator is standing by to take your call. We have recorded this entire presentation, and we're going to be sending out a follow-up email inviting pastors who couldn't be on the call to listen. If you know some pastor friends that need this information, encourage them to look for that email. Pastors, thank you for staying with us. Mike Huckabee, Tony Perkins, we're indebted to you for your stance for the cause of Christ, for your leadership morally, always taking the high ground, and we cover you in our prayers. God bless all of you. Thank you for being a part of our call today. Good day.